And we're going to go live on Facebook to the Keep CMR Beautiful Facebook page. Esther, can you hear me?
Hello?
There you are. Good.
All right.
Happy birthday month to you.
Thank you. This meeting is really cutting into my fun.
No kidding.
Man, I had to rush over here from a happy hour to be here.
Sorry to interrupt that.
I know, we interrupt life for this community meeting.
Yeah. Well, I had a wisdom tooth extracted on Monday, so I'm yeah, it's still, even today, well, I guess it's only Wednesday, I shouldn't expect to be completely healed, but man, when the Tylenol wears off, you know it. But fortunately,
you look good though. You look good.
well, thank you. You can't see this, can't really tell on camera, but this side of my face is pretty swollen. Last weekend was not a lot of fun. It happened, of course, the pain really started on Friday night, so.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Ruin your weekend.
Yeah, I lived with it. Okay, go live.
Ooh boy. Go
live anyway. Okay, so the live stream on Facebook should be starting, and it's just now 6:30. Well, Zoom tells me it's still setting that up. Let's give this a second to kick in. Done. Okay, so that should be that regarding the Facebook Live. If anybody notices that there's any problem with that, you can put a message in the chat here or text me or whatever. Okay, so let me get back to this screen. And okay, share. Okay, so welcome everyone to the August 12th meeting of the Carmel Mountain Ranch Sabre Springs Community Council. We are coming to you live from my garage and everyone else's garage, house, or wherever they happen to be. Welcome to 2020. I'm just going to go quickly through the meeting etiquette. A lot of us already know this and have been through this before, but for those of you that haven't, I have all the participants muted except for board members until it's their turn to speak. And I'll ask when it's time if there are any non-agenda public comments. You can either raise a virtual Zoom hand, which I'll see in the participant screen, or you can put a note in the chat. If you're going to put chat notes tonight, if it's something that you need to make a comment on and need to be unmuted for, please tell me. We've been spending a whole lot of time at the last few meetings reading through the chat, and the chat is recorded and becomes part of the record eventually. But if it's something that you feel is a non-agenda public comment or a question or comment on an agenda item, please just indicate in the chat that that's something you either want me to read or that you are requesting to be unmuted for that. And limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and let me know if you're pooling time with somebody else. We're always shooting for 90 minutes or less, and that has been not happening recently as we've lost the constraint that we had with our meeting room. The meetings have become a little longer. Let's just do our best to get through this as quickly as possible so we can all get back to our lives and families and dinners and happy hours for Esther's birthday and so forth.
Thank you,
And
Eric.
you're welcome. And the same procedure for comment on agenda items. When the presenter has completed their portion, I'll just ask for raised hands or comments, and we'll try to we'll get to everyone. If it's something you need on record and want to say it, just let me know. If you're making a comment in the chat, yeah, I already said this. Just request to be unmuted, and then we're going to go now to introduction of board members. And I'm going to stop sharing this screen so we see the people's faces as they introduce themselves. Stop that share. Okay, and I got to pull up the roster so I know who I'm calling on. And I just lost my participant window. There it is. This is a real juggling act with the screens here. Okay. So I am Eric Edelman. I am your chairperson, and I am a business representative on the council. However, I'm also a 16 plus year resident of Carmel Mountain Ranch, and I've owned several homes in many of our different beautiful neighborhoods here. Esther Berry.
Present and accounted for, homeowner.
Thank you. I'm looking for Ryan. There he is. Ryan Yamasaki.
Ryan Yamasaki, homeowner.
Very good. Thank you. I'll leave you unmuted. You can mute and unmute yourself as needed. Let's see. I'm looking for Dan Thompson. Do I see him in here? Okay. I'll get to your question in a second, Robert. I see it. Is Dan Thompson here? Dan, if you're here, can you indicate in the chat? I don't see you in the participant window. People watch out for Dan and let me know if you see him. John Chu. John Chu. I'm looking for John Chu in the participant list, and I am not seeing him either.
I think I saw him sign on.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I don't see his screen name here. We'll come back to John Chu. Maybe he signed on and signed back off. Oh, there he is. There he is. John, can you hear us? I don't see a mute and unmute for him. I'm not sure what's going on there. For the record, John Chu is present in the participant window, and for some reason I don't see the ability to. There he is. There I can. Okay. Sorry, John. There you go.
To homeowner Walden.
Awesome. Thank you. Rich Kredgy.
Hi, homeowner, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Thank you, Rich. John Schroeder.
Yeah, John Schroeder, homeowner for 17 years, Carmel Mountain Ranch.
Mark Clark. I probably haven't unmuted him yet if he's here. Let's see. Mark. My goal is always to get through this fast, but the Zoom has other plans for me. Oh, Mark's iPhone. Here he is. Is that you, Mark? Mark Clark. I'm clicking unmute, but I don't. Okay, well, we'll come back to Mark. He may be away from the phone. Michelle Mullen, did I already unmute you?
Yes, Michelle Mullen, homeowner.
Awesome, thank you. Joseph Valencia.
Oh, Valencia, homeowner.
Thank you. Kurt Carlson. Did I remute Kurt? There we go.
No.
Kurt?
Yes. Lou Carlson, homeowner since 1986.
And Silva and Majid. I think I pressed unmute on you, but now I don't see you anymore. You were here a second ago.
Majid Moshirian,
Thank you.
homeowner. Silva is on the phone. She's going to be here in a second.
Okay, Majid and Silva are present. Let me try Mark Clark one more time. I'm here, unmuted, but it's not. Okay, Mark is here. Mark is present. And Dan Thompson, I believe, is absent. If I'm wrong about that, Dan, please indicate so. And then Robert Mallory is asking me, where can the community members find recordings taken from the past Zoom meetings? Robert, those meetings are in the process of being uploaded to YouTube. The city doesn't have any way for us to house these. So I'm going to upload all the recordings to YouTube in the next week or so, and I'll send out an email with the links so everybody can have access to those meetings. And then, of course, we will be submitting minutes as well. But I think, you know, the recording, nothing's going to be as good as the recording. So that's awesome. And then where are we on the agenda? Agenda. Okay, so I believe that brings us up to, I'm just waiting for this to refresh now.
So Eric, just to recap, Dan Thompson is the only absent member.
That is my understanding, yes. If anybody checks me on that, please let me know, but I believe Dan was the only one who didn't respond in the affirmative to being present. So we're 12 of 13. Okay, so non-agenda public comment. Does anybody have anything that they wish to raise their hand for and talk about that's not going to be on tonight's agenda? I'm guessing most of us are here to hear the update from New Urban West and hear what we have to say about it. I don't see anybody chiming in for non-agenda comment. I don't see any raised hands. We have 46 participants currently, and I'm sure people watching on Facebook, I don't see any comments or raised hands. So we'll move on to the neighborhood police report. And I did see Officer Julie Dratt here. And I'm gonna
Eric.
Yes, sir.
Eric, you haven't gone to the approval of the minutes.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Oh, that
All
just, I almost slipped right by me, didn't it? Okay,
Yeah.
yes. So with the minutes from last month, this is my fault. They were not distributed to you folks to approve, so we can't approve the minutes from last month. But we will get those recordings uploaded very quickly so people can have access to the recordings. And then the actual written minutes I will send out to you. We had, I don't know, I think it was it 3 meetings, 2 or 3 meetings last month. So we got written minutes that we need to distribute and we'll get those approved in September and submitted to the city. That's my fault, I'm sorry, but we will get the Zoom recordings up. So what I need now is a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll motion.
Okay, got a couple of motions there. I saw John's hand go up, so I'll say that John Schroeder made the motion, and I believe that was Silva who was also doing that at the same time, right? Or was that somebody else? Do I have a second?
It was Esther. Second.
Second. Okay. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, just we'll say aye.
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 Anybody abstaining or not approving? No. All right, good. So tonight's agenda is approved. 12 of 13 board members voting in the affirmative. And if that's incorrect, anybody can correct me in the chat. Thank you for bringing me back to that. So on then to public comment, which I think we established nobody had any non-agenda items. And then I'm going to unmute Officer Dratt so she can give us our neighborhood police report. Good evening, Officer Dratt.
Hi, good evening. Just a friendly reminder to please lock your vehicles. I've been talking to the detectives, and I guess they're getting a lot of reports with vehicle burgs, and unfortunately people are leaving their doors unlocked. A lot of it's crime opportunities, so just a friendly reminder. Also, please encourage your neighbors if you hear that their vehicles are getting burglarize, you know, whether it's, again, open doors or whether somebody does break a window, which we hope not. But if anything is taken, please encourage them to file a police report. If there's no video evidence, they can do that online through the police online reporting system. Otherwise, they can call the non-emergency number and file a report. Other than that, I would say also, I think the same as last month, I want to say with stolen vehicles, I think it was the Ford Rangers was kind of the higher vehicle that was being taken, but now it sounds like the Jeep Wranglers are the ones that are being taken. Again, just keep an eye out for each other. And if you guys have videos, you know, have them running and useful, and talk to each other and share the videos, you know, with the police if there is anything. Other than that, does anyone have any questions for me?
If anybody has questions for Officer Dratt, please indicate in the chat or raising your virtual hand. I'm not seeing any questions for you at this
Okay.
point.
And if anyone does have any questions, they can always send me an email. Thank you, and keep safe out there.
Thank you, Officer Dratt. And
Too.
if you have a chance to type your email in the chat, that'll be great, just to remind everyone. And
Absolutely.
thank you. I have definitely forgotten to lock my car before and had that exact problem. Oh, thank you. My water delivery person has delivered my water. Thanks, John.
Wow.
Okay, so where are we here? CMR Fire Station. CMR Fire. I don't think we have CMR Fire. I need to re-engage them, and it's fire season. We need to get the fire marshal in here in September to talk about the golf course conditions again. Do we have a representative from Senator Brian Jones' office? Raised hand, anything in the chat? Nobody indicated they were coming, so I don't think they're here. And Assemblyman Mainshine's rep cannot be here tonight. And if anybody needs anything from Assemblyman Mainshine, let me know in the chat and I'll provide Rick's email. Supervisor Gaspar, Anthony George. I don't believe he's here. Okay. Mark Schaefer, I'll bet he's in here somewhere. Or maybe not. Does anybody see Mark Schaefer? Maybe he's coming in later. I don't know. I don't see him here. Okay, well, hopefully he comes in later, and if he does, we'll bring him back to the table here. Nobody from Mayor Faulkner's office, and I don't believe Mike Prince from Planning was going to try and jump in a little later, but he's not here now, and Tony Kempton is not here. Congressman Scott Peters' rep, not here. All right, so that actually brings us to the subcommittee report for the trails from Rick Smith, although I don't. Rick, are you here? Does anybody see Rick? I know he got the Zoom info, but I also know he's had challenges getting on in the past. So
Not on here.
yeah, if he's not, I know I'll come back around to the questions, at least some of the questions I know he might have for Jonathan Frankel. And I'm looking for Jonathan Frankel. Are you here? New Urban West? Oh, there he is. I see him at the bottom of my screen. All right. So Rick is not here, so then we're going to move to Jonathan Frankel from New Urban West. and find you and unmute you. Where did it go? Here he is. Good evening, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, Eric. Good evening. And good evening, everyone, members of the board and community. Most of you know us and me, but for those anybody that's new on the call, my name is Jonathan Frankel. I'm the Director of Planning for New Urban West, and we really appreciate this opportunity to be with you this evening to provide an update on the trail. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk through some materials with you. Just give me 1 second here. Oh, Eric, I believe you have the ability to.
Yeah, I'm going to probably have to. I think what I'm going to do, Jonathan, because I currently have all the board members unmuted, but I think the wise thing to do at this point, so you can. How long do you think you have here to present?
Just approximately 10 minutes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute all, and then I'm going to I'll unmute Jonathan, and then Jonathan, I'll make you host, and you can share your presentation and then turn it back over to me. I'll unmute the board members again, because I think at least one person is either outside or walking or something. So I'm muting all. Yes. Okay, that quiets things down significantly. And we will come back to everyone, don't worry. Unmuting Jonathan. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can do other than, I don't see any option other than to make you host. That'll allow you to share your screen. So there you go.
Great, thanks very much, Eric. Begin sharing here. And let me just go full screen on this. Okay, Eric, if you give me a thumbs up if you can see here. Perfect, excellent. Again, thank you everyone for allowing us to provide you this opportunity as we continue to work with the City of San Diego, of course, this board, the Community Council, and others on the Trails Project. Tonight I wanted to provide updates and clarifications generally on 6 items. There have been quite a few questions about open space, specifically related to the buffer, and I want to talk about that, or the Greenbelt area. But I do want to talk about the parks, landscaping, trails, and we've received a number of questions about maintenance of all of these areas. And I think a lot of these, as we work through these topics, they will serve to address a number of the comments provided by the board in their letter to the City of San Diego, of which we received a copy. But firstly, just wanted to thank the board for putting that letter together, for providing us with some specific feedback on the plans and allowing us to work to incorporate some of those elements into our proposal. So as a point of clarification, there are 3 types of open space within the trails. We've got a naturalized open space, and that's shown in this kind of light green color here. We have publicly accessible public parks here that are the darker blue color. And then we've got a green belt, or the buffer area, which serves to buffer new homes from existing residents. There has been a lot of discussion about the buffer area, and we'll get to that as well. But putting the buffer in the greenbelt area aside, put that aside for a second. If you look at just the naturalized open space, which contains no development, no buildings, no development of any type, and the parks, that's 52% of the property. So a majority of this property is open space and parks, and I'm going to walk through each one of these categories now. So the first type of open space we have in the project is the naturalized open space. So this is a restored naturalized habitat. We're going to remove a lot of invasive weeds and restore that and replace them with native and drought tolerant landscaping. So that's about 80 acres of area. And again, it's shown in all of these light green areas here that you can see. All of these restoration costs will be borne by us and not new residents. Again, it's about 80 acres, or just under 50% of the project is naturalized open space. No buildings, no structures, no real development of any type. There will be trails there, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Public parks. So we heard from the community, in addition to the trails, public parks were the second kind of most requested amenity, and we're proposing 3. It's a little bit over 8 acres. And again, there are 3 of them dispersed throughout the community. Firstly is here kind of by off of Shoal Creek here, Unit 7, 16 up at the kind of northeast corner, and then down south in the Walden community. So the city has standards for park acreage, for how much park area you have to have per resident. And they do this calculation, and then they give you a number, and they say, this is the total acreage that you're required to provide as part of your project. We exceed that number. And that does not include the trail system. That is simply on a park acreage basis. They will be built by us, and they will be maintained as our Highland Ranch Park and the community center by the city of San Diego. And we're still working through refining those park designs and soliciting feedback on what amenities and what elements should be there. A couple of dozen Walden neighbors joined us for a specific workshop to talk about down here in their community, maintaining and enhancing the rocks down in that area of the neighborhood, and soliciting feedback from them on what they'd like to see there. So we continue to work on park design and solicit feedback, and we would welcome your thoughts on the parks as well. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about the greenbelt or the buffer areas, given that I think understandably a lot of concern and comment has been related to what's going to go on in my backyard, or where the former golf course was, where I didn't have homes, and now there will be, or may be, residential uses planned in those areas. So it's about 25 acres of area. And just as a reminder, I think most folks know, but the purpose of this area is to provide a landscape barrier to screen existing homes to new homes, and really functions in some respects as a bit of a linear park, because most of the trails, a lot of the trail system is the existing cart path, and we're adaptively reusing that golf cart path. And so a lot of that will run in this area as well. They're a minimum of 50 feet wide. I'm going to provide some context about how that looks relative to the neighborhood in a moment. But that is measured. How that's measured is from the back property line. If you're a homeowner that lives on the golf course and you are touching your back rear fence, it's from that point 50 feet into the golf course. So most homeowners in Carmel Mountain Ranch have a backyard ranging from about 10 to approximately 25 feet. As far as I can tell, 15 feet is a pretty typical backyard space. So that means that from your patio door to any new building, you're looking at approximately 65 feet is the distance between you and any new home that exists on the former golf course area. Relative to the setback associated with the zoning, the current zoning for the single family homes, it's about 5 times wider at 50 feet, about 6.5 at 65 feet. And so that's just a quick overview about how the greenbelt area and the buffer functions. So we heard a lot of concern and about the allowed uses and things that could go on in this area, and really wanting it to be landscape and trail area, and not include things like trash enclosures, for example, not include anything related to the buildings. And so we wanted to make that really clear in our plans, and we did that. We really wanted to, again, ensure that the landscape only zones, or these landscape zones, really serve to function as screening, and not to house anything related to the residential uses on the property. So some of the other things that we did, we doubled the size of that landscape zone. Many of you know that we had a 15-foot landscape zone. We expanded that to 30 feet. And within that 30 feet, there can be no parking. There can be no circulation, streets or roads. There can be no hardscape of any kind. The only thing that's going to go on in that 30 feet, that area, is trails and landscape. So there are passive recreational uses that may occur. There may be a bench for someone to stop and sit. But we thought there was important to respond and double the size again of that landscape zone within the greenbelt to provide additional screening. I mentioned we clarified what can go in that landscape zone. So no buildings, there's no parking, there are no trash enclosures, there's no other uses related to housing in the landscape zone. We further restricted parking in areas close to existing homes. So that doubling the size of that landscape zone, again, parking cannot occur in those areas. So you're not going to see a parked car within 15 or 20 feet of your back fence. That was clarified in the plans. We also heard from Kurt and from other members of the subcommittee that have experience in landscape architecture that we really want a standard for dense landscaping. We want to make sure that the screening is robust, and we understand that concern for those that live on the former course. And so we established a performance standard for coverage and for landscaping. And what we said was that we need to choose landscaping that matures quickly and that provides a high level of coverage. And so that was clarified and expanded, really expanded within the project plans and development standards. So again, related to the greenbelt or the buffer, what did we do? We doubled the size of the landscape zone. We clarified what can go on there to remove things like trash. We further restricted parking in areas close to existing homes, and we established a real robust standard for screening and landscaping that ensures privacy is maintained between new and existing residents. So there's been a lot of discussion about 50 feet. And I think reasonable people are free to disagree. And of course, you'll make up your own mind. But how we chose 50 feet was not random. It was not done in a vacuum. I didn't just sit down one day and decide that, hey, 50 feet is a great number. What we did was we looked around to the community to see the existing condition today. And what we found and what we discovered is that between 50 and 65 feet in terms of a rear yard, house to house, is actually very common in all neighborhoods, in all parts of the community. So here up on the top right, you see homes between Chippenham and Bolton. These are some of the larger units in the community. And this greenbelt condition behind the homes is actually a fairly good representation with landscaping, with trees, probably not quite as dense as what we're proposing in terms of landscaping. That's 53 feet away in that condition. And these are straight from Google Earth. Awaris and Gable Ridge, this is a very common condition in the northeast portion of the community, and that's kind of in the Highland Ranch area. These homes are back to back. So as you can see here, there's no buffer at all here. There's no greenbelt in between these homes. These homes are fence to fence. And here you see roof line to roof line is 44 feet. And so those people have their neighbors closer, substantially closer than the 65 feet on average that we're proposing at the trails. Here to the left along Capewood Lane, here is the precise condition where you have existing single family homes that are adjacent to 3-story walk-up apartments. So this is a 50 feet distance between basically the pool and the backyard of this home and what is the parking. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking spaces here. It is screened by some dense trees, very similar to the condition that we're proposing. These are 3 kind of examples. Some others for those that live in the Walden neighborhood down Essence and Etude. This is 34 feet between the homes. Here you have, this is the gated community on the east side. This is a great representation of the greenbelt here. You actually see a greenbelt buffer between the homes, but that just is 40 feet of distance. So you see again, 46 feet, 36 feet. So this condition of 50 to 65 feet separated by landscaping, as you see here, happens pretty much in every neighborhood in the existing community, outside, of course, of those people that front the golf course. So we looked at what is going on in the context, and we didn't pick 50 randomly. And I know there's been discussion about, is 50 enough? But this is how we consider the 50 feet, by looking at what exists in the neighborhood today, and that's how we derive that number. Just for some further context, the existing zoning for most of the homes in Carmel Mountain Ranch today, whether if you live, I'll go back one, if you live here on Chippenham or up here by Highland Ranch Park, those residential zones, almost all of them include a 10-foot rear yard setback, 10 feet. So if that being the case, if we were to propose the exact same type of house that's right here on Gable Ridge Road, I could put a house 10 feet off of the back property line, which would mean there would be 20 feet between your house and a new house to the rear. So what we're proposing is for, on average, again, about 3.5 times that size, based on what the existing zoning is for the homes in the existing community. So these, these landscaped areas, there's a lot of options for them. There can be trees, and we're intending on keeping as many trees as we can and planting, of course, new trees. They're going to be shrubs and ground cover and all of these things again. And we have a standard for maturity. We need them to mature quickly, and we need the screening to be robust to provide the intended privacy that we are desiring. We've talked about naturalized open space parks, the greenbelt and buffers, trails. There's 6.5 miles of them, and they really serve to connect kind of all of the areas throughout the community. The idea being, if you're a resident down here in Walden, you can hang out at the park, you could jump on the trail, you could have a dedicated pedestrian pathway up to Highland Ranch to the elementary school. You could also go to the library here. You could be at Trader Joe's. If you really wanted to go all the way down to OG's and grab a beer, you could do that too. Of course, when they reopen, when COVID is done and everything is back to normal. So the trails are publicly accessible. They are not publicly owned, however. These will be owned privately by the new master HOA. They will be maintained by the master HOA. And so these will not be operated and owned by the city of San Diego. So speaking of maintenance, folks have asked, understandably, who's going to maintain this? There's a lot of open space, 80 acres nearly of open space, naturalized, 80 acres of parks. We have over 110 acres between the greenbelt areas, parks, and open space. That's a lot of area. So the public parks are proposed, again, to be maintained by the city. The maintenance of the restored nature areas and greenbelts will be paid for by new residents only. Only new residents. Existing residents, the existing master HOA will not be responsible for any of these areas, and existing residents will not pay for any of these areas. All of these costs will be borne by us and the new residents associated with the project. So that's just generally, and happy to answer any questions on how these things will be maintained. And finally, some next steps. We have our ongoing review of the technical design with the city, and of course we'll be here. I calculated this was my 15th presentation to the subcommittee and the board here. We will continue to be here and provide you updates, and we continue to solicit feedback on the park and other elements of the plan. We know that these plans with COVID have been more difficult to get a hold of, so we're going to post this entire presentation and all of the latest plans on our website after this meeting. Tomorrow morning, those will be available. The trails at CMR.com. We also have a mailing list that you can sign up for there to get updates as we make further refinements. If you want to be in the know, the first to know those things, we're providing updates to folks. We have an opportunity for you to stay informed there as well. But these plans will be available. This presentation will be available. Again, the trails at CMR.com. And with that, Eric, I greatly appreciate you affording us this opportunity and the time, and of course, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I think you probably have to return hosting to me. I think if you stop sharing, and then I don't know exactly how that works, but I think you have a button to make me host again.
Yeah, if that stops the share, and if I need to reference any exhibits, I'm happy to go back. We can kind of toggle the host, Eric, and I can go back to any exhibits. Okay. So I'll go ahead. And,
yeah. Thank you. Good. Okay. I believe. Let's see. Yeah, looks like I'm host again. For some reason, I still see the screen share. Maybe it's just a delay.
Would you be happy to stop sharing if you'd like, Eric, or I could leave this information up?
Why don't you stop for now, and we'll come back to it if we need to. That may wind up being more cumbersome, but let's try it this way. So while you were talking, there were, let's see, we've got, okay, I think what we'll do, we've got community questions for sure, but let's go back and we'll hit the board members one at a time, and then come back to the community questions in case your answers to board members might answer some of those. But I have made notes as to who's asking relevant questions in the chat window here. Okay, sorry, just getting reorganized here. Okay. All right, so I'm going to defer any questions that I might have because others are probably going to ask it, and so that makes Esther. Esther, do you have any specific questions for Jonathan at this time? I'm trying to unmute Esther. Okay, she's not. Okay, I'll come down here to Ryan Yamasaki. Ryan, do you have any comments or questions for Jonathan at this time?
I just have one quick question. Do you have developed yet elevation or terrain to show how high the development will be, I guess, ground level relation to the neighboring homes? I know there's a lot of discussion on heights and things like that, as far as cars transiting through the roads in the developments. Will sound propagate excessively to the neighbors? Will headlights coming in and out of the neighborhood? Just wondering if you have that.
Yes, we do, Ryan. And all that information will be on the plans that we post on the website. You'll be able to see all the elevations and what's proposed. With respect to noise and glare and all those important environmental issues, noise will be addressed directly in the project environmental impact report. So there is a noise technical analysis that will be done that will actually evaluate increased noise levels associated with auto traffic and other uses.
Okay. Excuse me. Dan Thompson, he's absent, I believe, unless he popped in. I don't see him. Okay, so we're looking for John Chu. I'm going to find John Chu and unmute him. John?
Hi, thanks, John. Hey, you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan, for the presentation. I'm assuming at some point we'll see more information about how the actual plans are and the layout of the units on each hole or each development. Do you have an estimated time when those will be available?
So specific site plans associated with each hole will be provided later on in the development process. So all those construction documents and all of those things. So right now, what's being considered by the city of San Diego is the proposed zoning, is the proposed grading, and are the design guidelines and landscape standards associated with the project. So the exact layout where every building will be, where every road will be, that will come later in the process and will be evaluated by the city at a later time.
Okay. And is this, will the EIR, is this the process where it gets posted on the city website for review by the community?
Yes, that's exactly right, John. The city is producing an environmental impact report, which will study a lot of really important environmental issues. That will be circulated for public review. Typically, that period is 45 days for you and the community to review and make comments on that document. we're happy to pass around that link to Eric and other folks when it's available. I'm sure Eric will also get a notice from the city.
Right. And I know the community had some concerns about, or at least the board had concerns about, the distribution of affordable housing, also as well as, the city planning commission has always brought up numerous times about deed restricted units. And I would like to see more information about that in your next presentation. I think at the moment, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Rich Craigie, are you there?
Yes, I just have a short question. I found the slide that showed the difference, the separation of the house is pretty interesting. The only problem comparing that with the proposed development is those were all like-sized houses. And I know some of the new proposed buildings are going to be 2 stories tall, but a lot of them are 3 and 4. So it would be really nice if we had a chart, or if maybe Jonathan knows the answer to this, existing setbacks between much higher buildings being behind, kind of a comparison, trying to compare, apples to apples, show an existing 2-story house to a 4-story, multi-room building.
Yeah, fair point, Rich. We can look around to see what we can find. I think I do want to note that the majority of the apartments planned will be 3 stories, not 4 stories. The 4 stories are really in limited locations, and we really do envision that the overwhelming majority of them will be 3 stories. So you are correct, that is taller, of course, than the existing 2-story homes. There will be an additional story, so that, roughly a 2-story house, right around, 30 plus feet or so. This may be, 36 to 37 feet or so. So you're talking about a 6 to 7 foot increase in height from that 2 to 3 story.
Yeah, I meant more when you were comparing the distance from houses, the current distance, like all the charts showed 2 very similar houses and how close they were together. And I actually found that pretty surprising they were that close. But I was just saying it would be nice to see a comparison from separation of like a house with a bigger one. Not necessarily how much taller it was. Anyway, I think you answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, Rich, thank you. John Schroeder, did I already unmute you?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, Jonathan, thanks for coming tonight and presenting. Yeah, I had a couple of questions. In our letter, in the board's letter, the community council's letter, we mentioned 4 things: too much, too tall, too close, and too non-transparent in terms of receiving the information. And you went over some information regarding too close, the buffers and the open space. But does your company have comment on the too much, in other words, too many units, and too tall?
Yeah, so John, we obviously as a company are looking to create a balance here, and there are a lot of there are a lot of factors involved. Obviously, the community has concerns about the number and the location, the height of the buildings. That's understood. The city, per the state of California, is concerned about accommodating, 110 or so thousand housing units that they've been allocated by the state over the next 8 years. And the planning department and the commission have certain objectives as well. So, we feel that the existing plan in preserving a majority, 52% of the property is open space, and what we're proposing now is a balance that we think delivers community benefits in the parks, the open space, and the trails, meets the city's desire for housing at varying price points, including those more attainably and affordably priced housing options, and clusters development limits the development area such that we're not taking up a majority of the golf course. To answer your question succinctly, that portion of the plan, the number of units and the height, that has not changed.
Okay. Well, a couple questions then about the too close, which the majority of your presentation was on today. Yeah, I kind of feel like Rich does, Rich Craigie. You had a number of examples where there were between 44 and 53 feet between structures, and yeah, those are both single family homes. So, you know, really what we're looking at with this proposed development is the distance between a single family home and potentially a 4-story apartment building. So, you know, quite different. And I think somebody mentioned in the chat that, you know, there's a big difference in privacy too. If you have a single family home and there's a 4-story building, you know, 50 feet away, they're gonna be looking right down in your backyard or into your kitchen or your bedroom. So it's a little bit different. Also, you did have one example I just want to clarify. You pointed out the example of the area over where on Capewood Lane, where the single family homes are close to some apartment buildings. I think you mentioned 3-story apartment buildings. Well, I think we're kind of mixing up the word buffer and landscaped zone here. So what you were pointing out between the homes over on Capewood and your 50-foot dimension was marking out the landscape buffer. There was additional space to the apartment buildings. So that example you showed over on Capewood, the buffer was more than 50 feet. I'd have to look at the picture again. It could have been 75 or 100 feet buffer. But what you were indicating was that particular area has a 50-foot, what did you call it, landscaped zone. So what we're asking for is, in our letter, is a 100-foot buffer. Now, maybe the landscape, I don't know how the landscaping would fit in that buffer, but we're asking for a 100-foot buffer. So I just want to clarify, there's 2 words here, buffer and landscaped zone. So just to point out that the buffer over on Capewood in your example was quite a bit larger than 50 feet. So that's the end of my comment.
Okay, Mark Clark is next on the roster. Let me find him. Here he is. Mark, are you there? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Hey, sorry if there's a little bit of noise. I'm outside. I'm walking the neighborhood, which, by the way, Jonathan, as a guy who walks 5 to 10 miles a day, this community is not that easy to walk. So a couple of comments and then a question. So first of all, I appreciate that, you know, you guys trying to do a little bit of accommodating. I appreciate that. I think the other comment is life is about perspective. You talked about current zoning and all that. Today, the current zoning on the golf course, these people have hundreds of feet between the homes they're there. And again, to the same point is these other places aren't looking at having places that are 3-4 stories high, looking down into their backyards. So life is about our perspective. I don't live on the golf course. I would love to have a 50-foot buffer, but I bought into that, right? So please always be sensitive to the fact that there's a bunch of people who bought into a golf course. And this is really difficult for people because their perspective is very different than yours and mine. I know you live in Michigan, you know? So then the question is, I've looked at Escondido, right, in their golf course that you guys designed or did or whatever, and there's a lot of more diversity in the home types. And I guess my question for you, Jonathan, is why not here? And I'm going to tell you right now, the city of San Diego is not 9 people on a city council. Those are the people that we vote in to represent us. And if they stop representing us, then we will fire them because that's how we work. That's how America works. That's how politics works. So please don't refer to hey, this is what the city of San Diego wants. No, this is what a few people that are elected who are shoving stuff down people's throat that they don't want are trying to get by. So I don't really care what they want. What I'd like to understand is how come you couldn't do something that's more similar to Escondido here in our community? I'll wait for your answer.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Mark. Yeah, thanks for your comment, Mark. Mark's in a creek. Oh, Mark's twisting and turning here. So A couple of comments related to, I think there are a lot of people in the city of San Diego that are interested in providing housing opportunities for future generations, not just a few. But that being said, with respect to Escondido, we had a diversity of home types there and floor plans there. I think we're planning on a similar diversity of floor plans and types here. I think related to John's point about, or comment related to the 100-foot buffer, I think the trade-off is instead of preserving 52% of the property as naturalized open space, we could flip that ratio and we could develop on a lot more of the acreage. And instead of saying, let's do 70% approximately, some form of open space, we could say, let's do 70% some type of development, and that may provide area to do, different types of housing. So all of these decisions are trade-offs, and what we heard from the city and from the Planning Commission is that they did not want us to sprawl out on the golf course. They wanted us to concentrate development in select areas to preserve open space and other sensitive areas, and so that's what we did, and that's what the plan reflects.
Okay. Michelle.
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you, Michelle. Joseph. I'm going to find Joseph Valencia. There he is. Joseph, I'm attempting to unmute you. There you go. We can hear you.
Okay. John, that was a very good presentation. I like it. I have two questions, but these are all, is the traffic and the noise. And I understand that this will be included in the environmental impact report. So I defer all my concerns until I read the environmental report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. All right, I'm going to unmute Kurt Carlson. Welcome to Kurt Carlson Unmuted.
Well, hi, Jonathan. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's nice that it sounds like you're starting to listen to us, and for that we appreciate that. But I still think you've fallen about maybe 80% short of where I'd like to see you be. Some of the things in regards to the open space, can be. It sounds good. The 80 acres of naturalized open space to me, and then you turn around and you're saying that the new owners are going to pay for that, but really there's nothing really to maintain. There's nothing really that you're paying for. So I don't see a real sacrifice there. I don't see what I see is an opportunity to add some more parks. And then our marked up design guidelines, we even brought that forward to you and showed you a number of areas where you could add some parks. Right now you show 3 parks. The one park you show, the 2 of them I'm fine with. One of them you have on hole number 7, which is behind the US Homes, is really a useless park because it doesn't have access. I'm not to say that I don't want to have a park there, but I think you need to have parks like for a city park that has a roadway access, police can get to it, meet the PrepTed principles of design where you have visual surveillance, which is very important. And, the police can get by there, emergency access, that kind of thing. But I think there are 3 other places that you could do similar city parks. I think hole number 3, I think that could have, that one that runs right off of Shoal Creek and Rancho Carmel Drive. There's a real good opportunity to do a park there. You have, the other hole I didn't mention was hole number 5, which is next to the community park. That would be a great place to add some more athletic fields. We are sorely in need of athletic fields. The other areas for parks could be hole number 9, where you have a big chunk of housing. And to me, that's on the hilltop where it would be great to have a hilltop park up there, a big open space area that could break up that wall of housing that you're proposing. And frankly, we have said time and time again, we don't like the idea of cluster housing. we think it's worth breaking the homes up a little bit more because I knew this was going to happen. I knew exactly that when you start clustering, the only thing you can do is go up. And that creates all kinds of issues. And, you know, you had a little design element in your, a section that showed, you know, 3- and 4-story homes following the terrain. And I had to laugh because you were saying that this was modeling the terrain and everything. The fact is that you didn't show the 2-story homes of the golf course people that are right next to those 3- and 4-story homes. So that was, you know, I really was, personally was insulted because that, to me, just, that can't go unnoticed and unmentioned. Then I thought hole number 14 is a good spot. There's a end of the Carmel Ridge Road, which it's a little corner there, but that could be a nice place for a park. These are, parks are important. They create a lot of synergy for people that we're going through right now, open it up. And of course, when I agree with you, when things get normal, hopefully things will, we'll have parks that we can gravitate to. Now, as far as the greenbelt and the buffer, I don't feel you have even touched the surface of what we need to do in those buffer zones. I mean, those buffer zones, if you want to get credit for them for open space, you need to give us 100 feet. I mean, 30 feet is nothing because now, and I heard you say there's no vehicles, no structures, no roadways in that 30 feet, but right next to it is going to be a driveway and more parking, and is what I'm hearing. And I know better. I know that's what you guys do, especially if you're going to put apartments in there. I still feel that you need to put similar housing next to similar housing. You need to do like Carmel Mountain Ranch and take a tip from what was designed 38 years ago and put the taller buildings at the lower elevations and use the smaller homes, the 2-story homes, matching next to similar type homes. That is following the topography in an appropriate designed way. And, you know, when I go back and listen to the Planning Commission, I didn't hear him say 1,200 units. I heard him say like 200 to 300. I think that's what, maybe it was Doug Austin might have said something like that. We have that recorded. So the density was really purely your interpretation of increasing the units, increasing your profit, whatever it is, you know, and I understand that, but it's not, it doesn't help our community. You have not engaged our community successfully. You have just told us by sleight of hand in generalities what we want to hear and not really give us too much detail until the very end where we don't have any chance at all to make a decision. And so it's disappointing that today you didn't even show any elevations of the homes that we were talking about. You know, we went a lot of pain to putting this letter together, you know, too much, too tall. Those are issues that you did not address today. And you totally missed the point from that letter. And that is very disappointing. I still have a little bit more to go here. So I don't think the 30 feet is worth it. I think you need to bump that up because that needs to go 30 feet pure landscaping. You want to put the trail in there, that's fine. But also the trails need to change. The trails need to be handicap accessible. You're saying this is going to be maintained privately. So is that your way of getting around accessibility? I don't think you can do that. I think you still have to provide access for 8 feet. It need to be 12 feet. So that has to happen to be, and when you're calling a place the trails got to be a symbol of gold for your amenity for the community. And frankly, in those design guidelines, you fell very short of that. So again, I just want to reiterate, we don't want to see any parking or aisleways between the new homes and the existing development. Now, as far as the maturity of the landscape and the guidelines that you put, the trees, if you go back and you look on your plant palette, the trees that your consultant put in there at maturity get 45 to 50 feet wide. And you're putting that in a 15 to 30, well, it was 15. Now you're saying it's 30, but it's still not big enough to hold even the mature trees that you're putting in there for screening. And then one thing I wanted to go back is that the examples that you showed, and John Schroeder and I think Mark hit on a couple of them. You know, a lot of those buffers are change of elevation is a key design tool that can really help separate developments from each other and create, to your advantage and to our advantage, of having some views and protection of view corridors. And I don't see that anywhere in here. It's just going to drop and plop on top of a flat elevation area, and you're not following the contours. You could make those contours. You could be real creative with it and have it, you know, really a nice development. But frankly, it's really not what I would like to see. And then as far as the too transparent thing, Jonathan, I think you're trying hard, but it really just needs to, you need to really step it up. I really think you need to step it up. The community is mad. You're out there publicizing to the community that we are okay with this design. And we are not okay with this design. We are far from it. We're about 700 units short of liking this design. And I think that's something that, you know, we would like you to respond to and provide something that Carmel Mountain Ranch can maintain its planned integrity and not something that's just plopped in for the sake of money and what Sacramento says. Because if you're listening to those politicians, they're not there forever. They come and they go. And that's the worst reason you could give us for the reason that you designed what you did. It had nothing to do with the quality of life for our community. It had to do for the quality of your bank pocket. And that's disappointing. I'm done.
Okay, Jonathan, I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, well, I think somewhere in those comments, Kurt said he agreed with me. So I think this is being recorded. So I'll take that, Kurt. I think that's the first time that that's happened. So I appreciate that, Kurt. Yeah, he's miming a little bit. I'll take what I can get. So just I appreciate your comments, Kurt. A few things. One, there's an entire section of our design guidelines on landform and topography related to, you know, how we should respect the existing grade and how we should really work to incorporate that into plans to minimize visual impacts and things of that nature. So there's an entire section of the plans dedicated to that. So it's something that we're thinking about. It's absolutely something that is incorporated into the plan. So I would encourage you to, you know, take a look at that. And, you know, I think as we've seen here, and you know, reasonable people can disagree about their preferences in terms of housing, in terms of where it should be located and what type it should be. But I think that the city is reacting to not the development community. The city is reacting to the fact that on average, it takes a recent college graduate, right, over 30 years to save a down payment for a house in San Diego. And the majority of San Diegans now cannot afford to purchase the single family home that you were able to purchase 30 years ago or 18 years ago, or many of you have lived in the community a long time. And so this really, when you say we don't care about that, and casting aspersions on the motives of elected officials, some of them who are maybe well-intentioned, some of them not, I don't know. But when you look at the actual data about housing affordability in San Diego, there is just absolutely categorically no doubt that adding housing supply is essential, is one component, not the only component, but is an essential component of addressing sky high housing costs that lock people out of the opportunity that most people on this call, including myself, have had in San Diego. And that's what the city is responding to, I think, in part. But Kurt, hear your comments, and we may have to agree to disagree, but as always, I appreciate your feedback.
Okay, Silva and Majid, I believe you're unmuted.
Thank you. John, thank you for the presentation. I noted two things that I want to ask you. The first thing is the slide you showed with the homes, the buffers between the homes. Something that I noticed is you're showing homes, two-story homes, the ones that are, less than 50 feet against another two-story home. The first or second slide you showed, that is 50 feet buffer between the apartments. You have to realize that the way we were designed, the apartments are done on the lower elevation and the homes sit on a higher elevation. So the first slide that you showed that had the Capewood home, those homes do have a 50-foot buffer, but you have to understand they're way higher than the apartments. So lower than apartments. So they were never a back-to-back three-story home against the two-story home. So that's something that needs to be addressed, and I think you guys need to look at it. I understand this was a Google map, but Google map doesn't show elevations, and that's how Carmel Mountain was designed. So we appreciate if you can look at that and realize that it might show differently on Google Maps, but Google Maps doesn't show elevation. Every home, all the apartments, every three-story sits on a higher elevation than a two-story, lower elevation. So we never were butted into a 3 or 4 story apartment. We don't have a 4, but on a 3-story apartment building. Yeah. So that's my question is like, have you guys looked at the elevation, or are you guys looking about with separation? That's something that needs to be noted and addressed, I think.
Hi, Silva. Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned to Kurt, we have a section of the guidelines of our design regulations that require us to look at those elevation changes. So you're exactly right. Elevation does make a big difference. And it varies really throughout all of the development areas. Some are much lower, some are roughly the same, some are a bit higher. And so all of those conditions, you're exactly right, need to be evaluated individually. And so what we tried to do was create a set of standards whereby as the city and as we present refined plans for where the buildings exactly will be located, that there will be an evaluation of how do we respect that interaction between new and existing homes with respect to the grade, because it is very important. You're exactly right. So that is included in the development regulations that we propose to the city, that the topography and the landform, all of those things are important and they will be considered.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation. Whatever I was going to say, that I think that Kurt covered that. Thank you, Kurt. And then I want to just mention it again. We are talking about you, Jonathan, you're talking about 50 feet, but actually today you're saying 30 feet, which is that the other 20 belongs to the road and parking and stuff. So actually we can get 30 feet if you're lucky by your plan. Is it that's what it is, or just I
No, let me try and clarify and just be very clear. The Greenbelt buffer area is a minimum of 50 feet, 50 feet minimum. And within that 50 feet, there is a landscape area that is 30 feet. And then the remaining is 20. No structures can be built anywhere in the 50 feet. No buildings. So from
the road parking,
there could be the possibility for some parking in the 20-foot area. That is true. However, we've worked to limit parking in a number of ways. So firstly, all parking areas must be landscaped. So the number of parking stalls that can occur back to back to back, meaning one long row of parking, is limited. We're not able to place 50 parking spaces side by side with no relief, no landscape, no trees breaking those areas up. So we work to ensure that that was not going to happen. So if you see 5 or 6 spaces separated by trees and landscape, that could occur within that 20-foot area, but there's a cap. There's a maximum allowed in terms of parking in the whole buffer area. And so we limit parking to 35% of the total area of the Greenbelt buffer. So in other words, 65% of that area cannot include parking. So a majority of that buffer Greenbelt area cannot include parking. parking must be broken up by landscape and cannot be many parking stalls back to back. And within the first 30 feet of area, there can be absolutely no parking at all. So that's how we address parking. I just want to be clear, the buffer is 50 feet in its total. Within that, there are a few different allowed uses kind of within some of those areas. Also just wanted to mention that that again is measured from the back fence to any structure. So it's a 50-foot area where there's no buildings, landscaping, trails, some limited parking. And then on the other side of that 50 feet are the buildings. And so for most people, if you stepped out again on your sliding back patio, that would be about 65 feet away in terms of the building that you're looking at. So, you know, that as compared from a distance standpoint, fair point, the grade matters, but from a distance standpoint, 65 feet is consistent with what exists in the neighborhood today.
Yeah, thank you. But as Siva mentioned, the elevation is considered too. When you are in low and you're looking at that 30 feet, which is another 20, if you put the parking, you're gonna see the bottom of the car, isn't it? That's gonna be the view of the backyard of somebody.
So each hole is different. Yeah, each hole is different, Majid. So it's really gonna depend on the individual location where you're talking about. But again, globally, across every single place where we're building anything, there are development standards that we propose to the city that requires us to address and to avoid those exact conditions that you just described. So that is in the development standards that will be evaluated by the city, and that has been a part of our thinking about the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes, I believe, the questions from the board. And we've got, I see, Larry, I see your hand up, and we'll definitely get to you. I'm gonna go back up. I've been making notes as people are making comments, and I wanna go back and find the questions. There was one before, okay. Okay. Jonathan, I believe this is a question from Scott Murray. He did not indicate he wanted to be unmuted, so I'm going to read his question and have you answer. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. The question is, are there any restrictions on future development in the proposed naturalized open space greenbelt areas?
Yes, Scott, the answer is yes. So with respect to the Greenbelt area, we are not proposing to rezone that area. There's no rezoning associated with the open space, the naturalized open space, or the buffer areas. Those will maintain the agricultural zone. Further, we're restricting future development through the recordation of deed restrictions, which will be required by the city that will prevent any future development in those areas.
Thank you. And then June Ramos had a question, and I see there's other people typing in the chat, and I'll get to those. I'm going in the order that these were asked. Question to Jonathan: is there a plan to move some walkways which are near the backyard fences?
So today, as I mentioned, the trails concept, the trails is an adaptive, what the city calls an adaptive reuse of an existing, something that exists today. So the idea being, you know, instead of paying 60 or 70 bucks to hop in a cart, that we create a publicly accessible amenity. In a few limited locations, the existing golf cart path is closer to homes than we would probably place it. That actually only occurs in 3 segments in 3 particular locations, so it's not the majority of locations. So in almost every instance, with the exception of those 3, the trail is outside of the first 15 feet of landscape zone. So it's not immediately adjacent to your back fence, but the proposal is to repair and retain the existing alignment of the path.
Thank you. Question from Robert Mallory for Jonathan. Please provide status of lot 14 shown in your design guidelines. How will this lot 14 parcel be developed?
So Robert, lot 14 is not a part of the project. No development is proposed.
And who will own that lot at the end of this process?
So the owner may wish to retain it. He has the option to do so. So we don't know. There's any plan. We're not aware of any plan for development or any sort of use other than what's there right now, which is just storage.
Okay, so he's likely to try and sell it to someone else in the future and develop it. Sorry, that's a inner dialogue. Scott Murray asks, what is meant by all existing residents? Will access to trails and open space be available to everyone? Who is restricted access, if anyone?
Everyone will have access to the trail, Scott. So everyone, they're open to the public.
Claudia had a comment about elevation differences. I think we addressed that. And Claudia, if we didn't, type a question in the chat and I'll get to it. Harold Klotz asks, are the updated design guidelines also going to be available? Will they include new 30-foot landscape restrictions?
Yes, hi Harold. I know you'll be reviewing these closely. So yes, the updated design guidelines will be available on the website, we think by tomorrow. So I just want to point you, and Harold specifically, because I know he's gonna dig in. There are two landscape areas we're proposing within that 30-foot. So we have a 15-foot landscape only zone. It's really intended on being screening from the trail. And then we have another additional 15-foot landscape area where the trail is allowed. So in total, the 30 feet, Harold, but we do distinguish between the two areas. So when you see the 15-foot number, don't think that the 30 feet isn't included. It is. It's the immediately preceding clause. So look for that and email me if you have any questions.
Is there, okay, so people are obviously have had a lot of questions, and this is one from Veronica V. Is there a diagram of where the condos and apartments and single family homes will be? To that question, I don't believe there are any single family homes proposed. Is that correct?
That is correct, Eric. And early on, and I think it's on our website, one of our earlier presentations when we walked through, what was proposed in terms of for sale townhomes and apartments on which units. I think that's still available, Veronica, on our website, thetrails@cmr.com, and you can go on and see which housing type is proposed for which area.
Thank you. And if I'm skipping your comment, it's, Mark, you're yelling in all caps here, and I mean, keep our plan and not New Urban West, exclamation point. I mean, we get it. You're against it. And, none of us are thrilled, but we do have a job to do here. All right, Jonathan, I'm gonna read this question because, well, I want to make a comment here. We learned something from our Planning Commission hearing with Alante, and one of the things we learned very clearly was if we push against affordable housing, that is a losing fight, people. The Planning Commission stops listening when we start talking about low-income housing. Jonathan, am I correct in saying that there is no low-income housing proposed here? These are what they call affordable or workforce units that are offered to people at, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, the city is looking to see, and we are providing deed restricted affordable housing units here. And what that means is that the rents are restricted to a certain percentage of an individual's income. So but those are intended to provide housing for people like your grocery store clerks and your postal workers and people that work and live in the community that may not be able to afford a $700,000 or $800,000 home in the community. So they are proposed, and they are a part of the project.
Right, and this is not Section 8 housing or federal low-income housing projects or anything like that. This is deed-restricted affordable housing, and regardless of your belief, there is a difference. Am I correct?
That is correct, Eric. Yes.
All right, and again, when we make these kinds of comments, even in the chat here, folks, I mean, there are people in this meeting that aren't saying anything because they're watching and they're ready to call into the Planning Commission hearing and say that we're a bunch of exclusionary, et cetera, et cetera. And it really doesn't help us to shape this project or get anything that we want. These are not, I'm sorry to say, you know, I appreciate everybody's input, but these are not constructive comments that are going to help Carmel Mountain Ranch, period. And, you know, if you want to fire me for that, go right ahead. You can have my job. So where's response? Okay. Question for Jonathan and Eric from Robert Mallory. What's the latest status of circular review process? It sounds like we're getting a new cycle tomorrow, or?
No, we've been in cycle review process with the city, whereby various city departments review the plans and give us comments. And so the city is currently reviewing the latest set of plans. As I mentioned, we're going to post those on our website, and we anticipate in the next several weeks. It's hard to say with COVID, things have been a little delayed, but we will be getting comments back from the city on our most recent set.
Okay. Question from Brian Hollinsworth. Why won't you share the preliminary building locations with the community? New Urban West has to have plans baked and ready.
Yeah, so at this time, as we previously mentioned, the city is considering a few things: the zone change, the grading plans, and a couple of other technical documents. So that's what's being considered and evaluated by the city at this time.
Cool. And Brian is, I'm going to unmute him later, so I probably should have just let him ask that himself, because he did ask to be unmuted. Troy Dom, question for Jonathan. What is the timeline for completion of the EIR process with the city?
The city is working on the EIR, and the latest information we have from them is that things are getting delayed by COVID, and it's been more difficult for them. So we think that the EIR would our understanding at this point is that sometime first quarter of next year potentially would be available for public review. Could be a little sooner, could be a little later, depending on a number of factors at the city.
Thank you. Lily Fulton says, it should be noted that, as Jonathan points out, the existing buffer spacing is single home to single home versus single home to multi-unit structures. And then, of course, the multiple occupants of each unit. Yeah, I think we definitely talked about that in terms of your comparison there on the diagram. Thank you for that comment, Lily. Lots of support for Kurt Carlson, and no doubt Kurt is the tireless effort on this issue, and we're all big fans. Charles Falchetti is asking Jonathan Frankel, for Unit 1, which is now 100% open space, what percentage of open space will be preserved? Will the trails 15 feet from my backyard be accessible to the public 24 hours a day? Destroying our privacy? ? I believe the community would prefer more distributed housing with larger buffers, as the City Planning Commission recommended.
So Charles, I don't know off the top of my head exactly the breakdown for that particular unit. I'd be happy to get that information for you. As I mentioned to Harold, the buffer, the first 15 feet really is intended on being screening from the trail itself. So there's very few conditions, only 3 across the 168 acres where you have a segment of trail that's within 15 feet of an existing residence. So there will be landscaping, there will be screening there. We tried to make that as robust as possible. And so that is incorporated into the development plan.
Okay, there's a lot of other discussion here, but I don't see any direct questions or anybody asking to be unmuted to make a comment. But I am continuing to scroll through here because Robert Mallory's got a kind of clarifying question about this Unit 14 lot. It's referenced in your design guidelines. Why is it referenced in your design guidelines if it's not part of your proposal? Why are you seeking rezoning and changing of land usage on lot 14 if it's not part of your proposal? Please clarify.
We are not seeking any changing to the existing zoning on Unit 14. It's not a part of the project. It's listed because it's part of the property. And so the city policy requires us to list the parcel because it's part of the same ownership. But there's no proposed change to the existing zoning on that parcel.
Okay. Charles Falchetti has had his hand up, or no, I'm sorry, Larry Fontaine. Sorry, Charles, I didn't mean to. I was looking at my notes here. I'm going to unmute Larry Fontaine because he's had his hand up patiently for quite some time. Go ahead, Larry.
Hey, Jonathan, good evening. Jonathan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Larry. Hi, good evening.
Good evening. My question has to do with site planning, and I know that we've had a couple of quick discussions on it. There are folks, including myself, that live on the golf course and are trying to make modifications to their backyard. And you and I have had a couple of emails back and forth, and I was trying to get some site plans, even if they were sketches. And I know that you're trying to really work with the community on this, and it seems like you're holding off until the very last gun is fired to show the community what the exact plans are. You know, I realize that, you know, the city might have some ideas and, you know, they might make changes, but it would certainly make a lot of points with everybody if you were open and shared what you've got. And why aren't you doing that?
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Larry. So the reason why is because that's not part of this piece of the city process. So the city has a number of different processes for development plans. In the preliminary stage that we're at, dealing with the zoning and dealing with the green belts and the buffers, for example, in parks, that is a distinct phase of development. The exact site plan will come later. And so it's not because we don't want to do it, or it's simply, that's how the process works at the city, that you have an initial round of reviews and plans that cover certain topics, and other issues are addressed later on in the process. So those will be available, of course, at some point, but that's not the stage we're in. If there's kind of 3 or 4 stages, we're in stage 1, and that information is not included in the stage 1 process.
So in your estimation, the plans aren't going to be available to the community for quite some time?
They will not be available during this piece of the process where we're discussing the zoning and a couple of other matters. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm making notes here. There's more people asking to be unmuted. Brian Hollinsworth was asking to be unmuted. Are you there, Brian?
I'm here. So, hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, good evening, Brian.
Good. Let me go on camera. Sorry. There we go. So I wanted to talk about the affordable housing. It looks like you've put in the 10%, which is the minimum, I believe. And,
So,
you know, what? Oh, sorry, I heard somebody say something. Anyway, one of the things that in my research, you know, for the Alante project, I looked at what is the homeownership rate in San Diego. And the data I found is a little bit older, but it was, and I know it's gotten worse. It's about 54%, right? So we talk about home affordability and rent affordability, which is great and noble, but why only 10%? Why not 20? Why not 30, right? This 10% is a battle cry from builders to politicians who are repeating it, saying build, 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 it'll solve the housing supply problems, it'll suddenly become affordable to everybody. But what we actually see in the reality of hot markets like San Diego, San Francisco, other places, the investors come in and swoop up these properties. So a question to you, what, if for these for sale units, is there anything that's going to restrict investors from buying these versus, you know, regular homeowners who are going to have to sign a commitment to live in the units for a certain amount of time? But the other part is we've seen in other parts of the country that you can build and build and build, and there's nothing that's going to make them more affordable. I used to go up to Santa Clara every other week before this whole crisis set in, and they were selling these little tiny condos for over $1 million. People were paying more than $4,000 a month in rent, and people would live there because the jobs were there. Now that the jobs, everybody can start working remotely, people are fleeing these places. So you're going to have all of this built up land. You're going to have a lot of vacant units over time. And then what? You've lost all of your open space, right? In New York, people are fleeing New York City. People are fleeing downtown San Diego because they don't want to live in dense places with this crisis. This shift to remote work is a dramatic shift for the world that we're all going through. This is part of my job. I deal with this on a daily basis. So I'm covering a few different topics here. But the point of when I hear developers go off about, I'm going to do 10% affordable housing, that's because that's the bare minimum required. It's not because it's gracious, right? And it's not going to solve the housing supply problem, regardless of what a politician thinks. So I've been on my soapbox, but that one specific question to you about how are you going to handle the sale of these units?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, I think, you know, generally most people consider their home as an investment. I think all homeowners generally do. For most folks, it is the largest investment that they have. So I'm not exactly sure what's meant by investor. Brian, if I could just finish, I'd
appreciate somebody
it.
Who buys a property and rents it to somebody else. I mean, I'm an investor in my own home. Yeah, great. But an investor who buys it and then puts the people who can't afford to save for a down payment into a position of paying an increasing rent year after year after year, which is what a lot of these tenants who would be moving into these potential apartments are going to be in. Right? We're not solving a housing affordability problem. We're creating a rental business, a steady income stream for investors. So let me just, I don't want you to spin. You're good at that. I want you to answer that question direct about who can buy these units.
The affordable housing units are for rent, and the purpose of them is not to enrich investors. The purpose is to provide 120 places for working San Diegans to live. That's why we build them.
That's great.
And we build them up. Sorry, Brian, I'm trying to finish if that's possible. So that's why we do it. I think, you know, people have different views. Clearly, Brian does, and we may disagree on the kind of the investment piece. But the purpose of providing affordable housing is, as I mentioned to Eric, to ensure that people that work in the community, that are your grocery clerks and other people, your teachers, other people can live close to work and can be there. So that's why we do it, and the city requires it, and you know that is part of the project.
So I support the affordable housing. I want to be clear on that, right? 10% is the minimum. If we were really trying to address housing affordability, it would be a higher percentage. We would also have for sale units that couldn't be sold to investors to become additional rental units. That's what I'm saying. And it sounds to me like these units could be sold to anybody who's got the money who's willing to pay for it. and silence is golden.
Well, the units, Brian, will be rented. They're not going to be sold.
No, before market.
Specifically on the affordable.
If you have a for sale unit, is there anything that can prevent an investor from buying that for sale unit and turn it into a rental? Is there anything in the contract when they buy the unit that can prevent them? It says, I buy this, I have to live in it.
So just like every other house in Carmel Mountain Ranch today, an investor, if they wanted to, could call Eric and could ask to buy a home for the purpose of renting it on the market. That's true of every single home in Carmel Mountain Ranch. It's true of almost every single home in San Diego. We have private property rights, and people can buy a home for a variety of purposes, including an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. So these additional units that will destroy the open space will not really address housing affordability, other than 120 units that are deed restricted.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. We have Mark Clark asked me to unmute him for a follow-up. Mark.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, Jonathan, I finally finished my walkable community walk. I'm back home now. Hey, so when I asked you a question about Escondido, and please correct me if I'm wrong, which is totally possible, but Escondido has single-family homes, if I'm not mistaken, as part of the mix. And you kind of blew my question off, quite frankly, which that's not a good thing to do, and said, oh, we have lots of different kinds of floor plans. I'm not talking about floor plans, right? A senior living facility that looks like an apartment is an apartment, right? A condo that looks like an apartment is an apartment. And an apartment that looks like an apartment is an apartment. I'm asking specifically, I understand what the city said, but to Kurt's point, right? When you look at some of the topography that you're looking to put these things on, a 3-story or a 4-story makes no sense, all right? And even if the city said, hey, we don't want this spread all over the place, but why not? Why nothing? Why nothing? Why not a single freaking single family home? Not one. That's what I want to understand, because that doesn't make sense to me. Because when I look at Escondido, it actually looks pretty decent and it's nice. And you pointed to that lots of times early on, and we got the video to prove it.
Yeah, the project in Escondido, Mark,
sort of a bastion of like, hey, look, we've done this. Is it because Escondido is its own city and they didn't have the same restrictions as the city of San Diego? Or because I hope you understand that, like, the 1,200 units like shocks us all, right? And we're all sitting there going, huh? And I know there's a lot of people that don't want any building whatsoever. And honestly, that's what everybody's ideal is, I think. But there's a people of us that are a little bit realistic and realize, okay, something's going to happen. And it's just hard to look at this and go, you're going to increase traffic, you're going to increase crime, you're going to increase this strain on our schools, right? You're going to lower the quality of life of the existing 4,000+ people or so that live in this community for the sake of 1,200 new people, right? And it just doesn't make sense that you're not putting any thought, or I don't want to say you're not putting any thought in, that you didn't add anything at all into consideration of, like, lower, smaller homes at all, right? I can understand if you had 300 or 400 or 500 apartment units and then 300 or 400 or 500 single family homes or something like that. So I'm just curious the thought process behind that. Thanks.
Yeah, so we need all types of housing in the city of San Diego. So there are some projects that will be single family homes, like our project in Escondido. They included a mix, and some will be multifamily. So I'm hearing the concern of the community, or the comment that we want everything to be exactly like us, or to be similar to what an exact replica of what we have in the neighborhood today. And I hear that and I understand that. Obviously, that's not what's being proposed, but we think that the plan that is proposed is, really establishes the right balance, the right mix of open space, and responds to what the city told us, and ultimately that they do not want to see us sprawl out and develop more of the property. So as I mentioned before, it's a tough balance. We're trying to strike the balance between what the city is telling us they want to see, between what the community is saying, and we're just trying to balance all those factors and respond accordingly.
Okay. Veronica wanted to be unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, great, perfect. Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for doing your presentation. Really appreciate kind of bringing everything together. So originally, I was under the impression that there would be single family homes. Now I'm hearing that there won't be any single family homes. So you made a comment, and I'm going to throw the number out, and that might be wrong, but you were saying that it takes 30 years for someone to save for a down payment for a home that's $700,000. But I'm assuming that the apartments and the condos that are being placed in the golf course area won't be $700,000. So I'm a little bit confused on where the 30-year savings comes from, and also why it went from, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought there were single family homes in certain areas, and now there aren't. Can you just kind of enlighten me on that?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Veronica. Thanks for your question. The proposed housing has been the same from the beginning of the project. So the type of housing that we're proposing, both for sale and for rent, has remained consistent since we talked to the community about that. But prior to even submitting our plans to the city of San Diego, so that was some time ago. The comment with respect to housing affordability was just one illustrating that for an average college graduate, it takes a long time to save. I think Brian was correct in that the home ownership rate is about 50%, and so the comment was not specific to Carmel Mountain Ranch, but just that I think the city, statewide officials, and others recognize that adding housing supply is really important to address the real crisis we have in affordability, because a lot of these homeowners that had opportunity, my parents, for example, my grandparents, for example, that had those opportunities, many people in my generation simply do not have that. And one of the reasons, not the only reason that is true, is because we have an immense shortage of housing at all levels of all types. And that's really been a 30-year plus long struggle since the kind of mid-90s, when you saw a slowdown like that. So the comment, again, was not related to CMR specifically, was just related to the comment about housing affordability more generally.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry, I had to take more Advil there for my toothache. I believe we've gotten through board comments, questions, community comments, questions, and if I'm not mistaken, we can move on to the next agenda item, and this will, of course, not be the last time that we're talking about this, and not the last time that we'll be seeing Jonathan, talking to Jonathan, and many of us, just disagreeing over this. And there's no way at the end of the day that everybody is going to be 100% happy with what happens here. Oh, well, now I'm seeing a new question. Michelle, is this a question that you'd like to ask, Michelle?
Sure, I can ask. So this is a question that I've asked before. It's in regards to parks, specifically ballparks. So the parks, I believe, and please, Jonathan, correct me if I misunderstood. I believe all the parks that are planned are top parks, play parks, and open space community parks, but no ballparks. Is that correct?
That's correct, Michelle.
Okay, so we as a community are underparked specifically in the areas of ballparks. So that is something that I would like to see considered with the added proposed population. We already are, the one ballpark that we have in our community is overworked. I don't know the correct terminology, but difficult to get a space. So that is something that we need in our community for the middle-aged child. So that's my comment. I would like to see the addition of a ballpark if we're going to add density, add more population to the community.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, one of the things that I neglected to mention that Kurt raised was the idea of a public space right in the center of the community, kind of where the current clubhouse is. And I neglected to mention that we are planning public space for that area. I think it was a great suggestion by Kurt. And the city has indicated that they would like some sort of public plaza there. So not necessarily an active park, as we already have 3 of those planned, but a place that will really be a kind of a waypoint along the trail where people can gather, places to sit, obviously when it's safe to do so. And so that is part of the proposal. We have discussed with them having a public plaza with even potentially a viewpoint, as Curtis suggested. So that is in the mix as well.
Okay, I'm specifically, so let me give you a little bit of background. I am a middle school teacher, Jonathan. So I am specifically looking out for that middle-aged child. There's not enough in our community for that aged child, the organized sports type of thing. That's what I'm asking for.
Understood. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hang on, I lost my chat window. I'll get it back here. There it is. All right. Okay, so we are moving on to the next agenda item tonight. Thank you, Jonathan, for being there, sitting in the pocket, answering the questions. You know, there's some people have commented that, you know, you didn't necessarily answer their question, and you know, on those we just kind of have to agree to disagree. We appreciate you being here. You know, we understand this is your job, we have our job, and we're all doing our job. So thank you, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thanks very much, Eric.
You're welcome. So the next item on the agenda is the Alante Subcommittee report. Oh, Mark Schaefer's here. We'll come back to him. Good. Unmuting Brian for the Alante Subcommittee report.
All right, I'm going to keep it real quick, given the time. So we did have a subcommittee meeting. Was it last week or the week before? Everything blurs. I think it was last week. But we had one. It was recorded. It was quite lengthy. We talked about kind of where the project is. It's a process 5 approval, which means that there's no possibility to appeal. Now what we are waiting for is the city council hearing, which is sometime in September. The date has not been set yet. In the meantime, the best thing you can do as community members is make your voice heard through all the community council members, not just District 5, because they all are voting on it. So share your concerns. That the concern that we all voted on, the most important thing is the bulk and scale. The bulk and scale was called out by Tony Kempton from the planning department as something to be evaluated. The proposed building height is 72.5 feet from the street with very minimal setback. That is absolutely unacceptable and does not fit with anything around here. If you want to compare that for scale, 70 feet is about how tall those apartment buildings are in Mira Mesa. Looking at these plans from New Urban West, the highest density that their highest height limit that they're asking for is 48 feet, which is still higher than anything in Carmel Mountain Ranch today. The highest we have is Jefferson, which is 40 feet. And those are located behind the Ralph Shopping Center. So there's actually, like, you don't even know they're there because they blend in with the topography so well. So the city does not care about traffic. They don't care about fire. They don't care about parking. They don't care about a lot of things. But the bulk and scale is the one thing that was called out in the throughout this. And that's been from day one when we first saw the proposal, the thing that we've all said, no way. At the hearing, you know, it got twisted into we're against affordable housing, which is complete nonsense. We're against the height of the building. It does not blend against the adjacent building or anything else in the community. So please keep your comments to to the city council members on point, right? Regarding factual objections. There's a presentation, there's letters, there's all sorts of stuff. You can watch the recording or reach out to me and I'll send it to you. And with that, I will wrap one of the quickest reports, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. With regard to the recording of the Alante meeting, we had so many meetings last month, I can't remember which one this was, but it was every one of these meetings when we start, I share live to the Keep CMR Beautiful Facebook page. I believe one of the meetings last month with the drop-down list, I accidentally shared it to Eric and Deva Edelman's real estate Facebook page. And so one of those recordings maybe not on Keep CMR Beautiful, but as I mentioned before, what I'm going to do in the next few days, and I promise I'll get to it, let's call it before the end of the month, I'm going to upload all of the meetings that we've had on Zoom to YouTube, and then I'll send out an email with the YouTube link. That way everybody can go back and, you know, if there's nothing else on TV, you can watch these meetings. But seriously, you know, there is content there, and Brian was referring to our Alante meeting, and that would be a good one to check out prior to the city council hearing, because we are going to get creamed if we go back to parking. The San Diego Municipal Code says 0 parking requirement in a transit priority area, which, agree with it or not, we are, at least Alante is. So parking is unfortunately a non-issue as far as the city is concerned. Fire safety, again, Brian said it, I don't need to reiterate all this stuff. We have Troy Dom is on deck here from CMR United, and then Mark Schaefer with Councilman Kersey's office had technical issues earlier. He is here. We will come back to him in case anybody would like to yes, Ryan, they never did answer the question as to when the traffic study was done, although, and there's, you know, controversial with regard to where the sensor was placed and everything else. Bottom line is the city's just not, they're not interested in our traffic argument. So sorry, that was I got distracted there for a second. Troy, I'm unmuting, and then Mark Schaefer I'll come back to after Troy's done before we adjourn, in case anyone has any questions for the city councilman's rep. Troy, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Eric. Thank you.
Awesome.
And I will also be brief.
Okay.
First of all, I wanted to say that, you know, Brian did a fantastic job, and it was a disheartening meeting with the City Planning Commission. But I wanted to also say that our community did a wonderful job. Carmel Mountain United was involved with helping people write letters. We had hundreds of letters written to the Planning Commission, and we can't stop now. We need to continue that effort. And first, let me say thank you for, if you wrote a letter, we really, really appreciate it. But we want to support Brian and his effort, so we're going to put into writing on the Carmel Mountain Ranch United website, CMR Carmel Mountain Ranch.org, and we will send out some communication so everybody will have some guidelines, and we will list all the council members so that we can do that in an organized fashion. The meeting is coming up sometime in September. We still don't have a date, but we'll be kicking that off. Look for us to kick that off probably next week, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a lot of people writing to city council members. I can share with everybody that I have spoken to Councilman Kersey about the size of the project. I have spoken to Councilperson Bree about the size of the project, and they are listening. So hopefully they will provide some support. This is kind of a dress rehearsal as a community. We have to be active and involved if we have any hope to shape our future. We have to do it together. CMR United, power to the people. Thank you so much.
Troy, before you go, I wanted to ask you, in your campaign to get letters written, are you guys putting out, call it bullet points, or things to touch on, things not to touch on? I'm trying to avoid more input. Well, we're going to get the input from the people we got input from at the hearing, but I'm just trying to streamline our arguments. Is that part of your process?
That will be part of the process. Thank you for asking, Eric. And yeah, we totally agree. We have to stay focused, on point with our message. It has to be the right message that makes sense. Certain arguments, people might make that aren't going to make sense, and we would prefer to keep it on point. And that's really the purpose of what we're trying to do. One final point I wanted to let everybody know: tomorrow evening, I will be hosting a Zoom meeting for one of our elected officials. We put out an announcement to that, running for our city council spot. So that's next Thursday. So it's actually tomorrow. So if you're interested in attending, that'll be at 5 o'clock for Joe Leventhal.
Thank you. Thank you, Troy. All right. And I will add that Carmel Mountain Ranch, what was that? If people could avoid displaying political ads, that would be awesome, because our bylaws strictly prohibit supporting any particular political candidate. And I'm not saying that Troy did that. Troy's hosting a meet and greet. He's not. Anyway, please, if you're gonna display political ad, I'm gonna have to thank you. I just can't have it. It's gonna cause us more trouble. Thank you. What I was saying was, with regard to the Alante hearing and the preparation for that, with regard to the letter regarding the trails and the preparation for that, Carmel Mountain Ranch as a community, as far as I'm concerned, really came together. I mean, it was amazing for me to be a part of. So thank you. And it's really difficult. I'm finding it difficult to talk about, because I've been here so long. My family's been here so long, and we love this place so much. It was just really enhanced my love of Carmel Mountain Ranch, just to see all of us come together, because we have people, different backgrounds, different professions, different political perspectives, but we all came together on this issue as far as getting the letter written, getting it submitted, getting the Alante the Planning Commission hearing stuff prepared. I mean, it was just really amazing. People on the council, people not on the council, on the subcommittees, not on the subcommittees. I mean, we're really giving it our all here, and I really appreciate it. And it is a great honor to be, helping to lead the charge. So thank you. Anyway, that's enough of that. Mark Schaefer came in, and I know it's late, but we may have some comments or questions from Mark, and he may have something for us from Councilman Kersey's office. So I'm unmuting him, and I'm going to let him go. Take it away, Mark.
Okay, can you hear me clearly?
I think so. Okay.
First off, regarding the code enforcement is doing getting a file together on their filing against the property owner for the golf course. So that they're going to notify me as soon as that's ready. Also, Larry Goodman was nice enough to contact me earlier about the park and ride having the closed and no trespassing. Actually, that park and ride lot should have been closed 5 years ago when the lease ended. And interestingly, they just found out that it was open. To keep it open until the potential escrow closing next year, we would have to find some funding for maintenance and what department would want to take responsibility for it. So kind of hunting around for something on that, see if that's even a feasible idea to keep that open for the time being. But with the budget, it looks to be a challenge. And then finally, he also asked regarding the upcoming Alante and the process for presentation. And for the appellant side, because this is from my understanding, talking to the clerk, this is quasi-judicial, that Javier de la Valle, who is the project manager for this, I guess project guy for this, is who to contact to coordinate any presentation appealing the project. And that's the information I have for you tonight.
Okay. Does anyone have a question or comment for Mark Schaefer?
Appreciate the good job and information that he provides us. Better than a lot of what we've been getting from the other representatives.
I should have sent it to everyone. Thank you.
Any other, I'm looking for raised hands or comments in the chat. Does anyone know if we can contact the planning commissioners directly by email, or do we have to go through Xavier? There is an email for the planning commission. It's been, I've had it, and let me see if I have it right here. I can just stick it in the chat.
I can say for Javier this is a process for a presentation, meaning if you have an organized presentation, he would be the one. And I got a nice compliment from the clerk saying, thank you for asking ahead of time instead of the day before, which I guess happens. Anyway, but Javier is the main person to coordinate any presentation. It's more on the logistics, should CMR United or I think as a planning group, you may be able to present something of what the planning group's decision was, but any of that kind of organization would go through Javier.
Right. And I put the email for the planning commission in the chat there. And you know, theoretically they read their email, but as far as contacting commissioners directly, I don't know how that would work. Are you aware of that, Mark? If somebody wanted to appeal to a commissioner directly, and
it wouldn't be. It's not an appeal to the commissioner. It's the when the city council hearing happens.
Well, I guess I'm using the word appeal incorrectly there. I mean,
you are appealing. You're an appellant, but it's more of the opposition presentation.
Okay.
Would go through Javier, who's listed on the Alante project with BSD. Planning commission has already happened and that's done. It's now city council.
Right. Is there any way to any way to communicate objections to individual commissioners, I guess is the exact question.
That point is moot since it's at the city council level now. Understood.
And what about with regard to the trails?
Yeah, keep on. That would be. I mean, you can. I mean, no one's going to say you can't. But
right. So I mean, the planning commissioners, they're listed on the city's website, and they can be contacted.
Yeah. On the flag, I was told that I had contacted actually the clubhouse directly. And I was told that they were going to go out there and take the flags down. I can't get them replaced with new ones, but they said they were taking the flags down.
Okay. John Chu asked commissioners or councilmen. I mean, they're all public officials. We can contact them.
Yeah, and Mallory, I will follow up if the rags are still flying.
They definitely are. I noticed that the other day.
Okay. I was driving at night when I was driving by earlier. It was Monday, so I couldn't see.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's right. Okay, I don't see any other questions for you, Mark. I appreciate you being here. And
sorry about being late and everything. Just yeah.
Well, you were here, so you know it's we're flexible. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, I think that that gets us to the end. I think I already did my chair's report, so we'll let that stand. The next regular meeting is September 9th at 6:30. There will no doubt be extensive discussion or need for discussion about tonight's meeting, so there may be a special meeting. The golf course subcommittee meeting is, well, I mean, before COVID, it was regularly scheduled on the fourth Tuesday. And I've been basically running the Zoom, well, not basically, I have been running the Zoom on the golf course subcommittee meetings. And I can't do the fourth Tuesday because that's also the CPC meeting at the city where all the community planning group chairs go and meet. So I either have to find a different regular day for the golf course subcommittee, or we just need to schedule those as needed. So at this point, there's nothing scheduled on the fourth Tuesday of this month for the golf course subcommittee. So we're going to have to get together, figure out when that meeting can happen, and get the notice out. And that will be soon. So, I mean, watch your email. Whenever I send an email out to my list, Eric Spadell from CMR United picks that up. He puts it on Nextdoor. It gets around, and then also the agenda goes to the city for posting on their site. So if there is a golf course subcommittee meeting coming up, it will be publicized on all of the normal channels, and I would imagine there will be a meeting. We have a lot to talk about, so we'll just keep that loose for now. And then September 9th at 6:30 will be the next regular meeting. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and say we're adjourned. So we are adjourned.